Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm delighted to welcome Amy, the property tax queen, and also a member of our YouTube group and accountability group. So Amy, it's awesome to have you on my channel, and you're going to bring obviously a lot of value. We're going to talk about that dreaded word tax, and we're going to talk about a few other things. But Amy, give us an intro to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am Amy Richardson, also known as the Property Tax Queen, and I own a accountancy and tax firm based in the Midlands, and we help landlords and property investors, developers, business owners save lots of tax.
That's it. That's what we want to do. We want to mitigate and legally pay less tax. So to kick this off, let's just talk about the basics. So if someone's watching this thinking, okay, I've got to get an understanding of tax for whatever reason that might be, whatever business, we're not going to base this just on property. What are the basics? So just talk us through thresholds, for example. What are they at the moment? Because obviously I know they change sometimes each year, you know, there are amendments. What are they at the moment, the thresholds?
Yeah, well, I think even before you get into thresholds, take one step further back, and actually there are multiple taxes that we all face every day. So we've got VAT, income tax, which is the threshold part that we can talk about in a second, capital gains tax, corporation tax, stamp duty, land tax, and inheritance tax. So there's quite a lot to go at. And what I always say to clients is it's always advisable to have at least some knowledge of each of those areas, because then no matter where you are on your business journey, you're going to be in a really good position to help mitigate that tax bill if you've just got a little understanding of each one. So in terms of income tax, so at the moment, everyone can earn up to 12,570 a year without paying income tax. So that's tax at zero. Then from that bracket up until 50 grand, right there or thereabouts, you pay 20%. So that means you're a basic rate taxpayer. And then anything beyond that, you're a high rate taxpayer. And then after that, you become additional rate, which means you pay 45% income tax. And those rates are applicable to people who are in day jobs, so paying PAYE, etc. And then you've got, so say if you've got a business owner and they pay themselves a salary, they may also pay themselves dividends. And there's that £2,000 tax-free dividend allowance that every director shareholder is able to have. A lot of people who are in property, by the way, they leave their profits in the business, but they forget that they can take a £2,000 tax-free dividend every year. I guess that's a tip for later, but yeah, couldn't help but get that one in there.
Yeah, no, we'll come back onto that. And it's funny, isn't it? When we hear that word tax, it's almost like Voldemort. You know, it's that dreaded word. You know, you think of this old school guy sitting behind a desk, you know, and trying to take everyone's money away. But it is something that I think we do need to know about. It's good to inform yourself, like you say, you know, having that broad kind of knowledge about all different taxes. You know, would you say that you sort of have a lot of conversations where people are in business and they're just not clued up on tax? And this is where we might see where we hear these horror stories of people not setting aside their tax. Is that more common than what we think? Like, you know, because I'm still amazed. I do have conversations with some business owners, but they don't seem very clued up on tax, but they have a great business.
Yeah, and actually, it doesn't start with the tax education. This rolls back to how they manage their money. Because we have a couple of clients that are great, you know, business owners, they can grow their business, but from a money management perspective, it creates a massive tax problem because they can't manage their finances. So therefore, we've told them, set up a separate bank account, you know, save for your VAT bill, save for your corporation tax bill, your income tax bill, if you're paying dividend tax, whatever. And they may or may not take that advice. Now, the difference in tax saving on the clients that do take the advice and the ones that don't is actually quite astronomical. Because if you're not doing the basics of just setting that money aside, then you are kind of, you know, setting yourself up for a fall. But it is it's a lot more common than you think, really. A lot of people really struggle with understanding tax. They get really confused. We have quite a lot of people that come to us and they're like, do I have to pay this? what about VAT? Or I'm selling a property. Do I have to pay VAT on it? And that, to us, they're just like obvious questions like that we know the answer to, but clients just get so wrapped up in, they might read something on a Facebook forum, or, they might have been on a property education course or some kind of course that tells them to do something with tax. And then they'll go to their accountant, which, hopefully they'll explain the pros and cons of doing that structure or not. But sometimes, the client can get very confused with the tax system. And that's not surprising, because the UK is one of the most complicated tax systems out there. So it's not for the faint-hearted. But definitely a base level, education will help alongside the money management side, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also where we have a lot of training companies and a lot of businesses that are now marketing, their educational companies to get people into business, I noticed that a lot of people, when they talk about numbers and they talk about what a business could earn, how much you could, generate in the first 12 months, what you could do with it, they always talk about the gross numbers, which gets people really excited, because a gross number, just like, a GDV of a property development, sounds great, but depending on who's involved in that and their tax circumstances and whether it's in a personal name limited company, obviously massively differs. And then when actually you peel off all these layers and you get down to the net, and you take off your tax legitimately, actually the numbers actually aren't that sexy. So that's something where I suppose it blinds a lot of people, because there are a lot of gross numbers being thrown out, and gross numbers sound great, but it's not reality, is it?
No, it's not. And I think particularly when it comes to property, so we deal with a number of clients, that get involved in JV or joint venture opportunities. And more often than not, we will have to do a consultancy piece on that, just to be very clear on their options and what the tax consequences are of each of those options. And you'll be amazed when I ask the question, so have you thought about what the tax implications may be? And they're just like, no. And it's not just one single tax, sorry to keep reverting back to property, but because there are so many different property taxes, someone may come to me with a query and actually they think they're going to just pay, corporation tax. And then I say to them, well, you haven't thought about whether you need to pay VAT on the purchase, whether you need to pay SDLT, or whether there's any reliefs available, how they've actually structured the deal as well, and what the tax consequences are of that. So, it's always an interesting conversation. And the range of advice really is a range, because sometimes it's a simple answer from us and we're like, yeah, okay, what you're doing is absolutely fine. And then actually when the business owner starts throwing in all these other things that they've just thought about, that's when it becomes a bigger beast, and you have to consider, all the facts and everything that's going on in that situation to advise properly.
End up being quite complicated. Do you think there was talks a little while ago, I think it was actually Boris Johnson that was hoping to lead the increase, is that 20% taxpayers, that bracket was going to go up to around about 80,000 instead of sitting at that sort of 50,000 mark. Do you think that will ever happen? I mean, people would love that. I mean, I'd love that. Everyone who's in that 40% and more would love for that bracket to go that little bit higher to 80,000, and it would just give everyone that bit more freedom. Do you think that's going to, I know that was spoken, I think I saw that about 3-4 years ago or whatever it was, and I can't see it happening, but it would be nice if it did, right?
It would be nice, but let's be realistic. And what we've got going on in the world at the moment with the war, with recouping from COVID, taxes are going up. They're not being any more generous than they are, disadvantageous. So I certainly can't see any form of relief like that. In fact, we're seeing corporation tax go from 19 to 25%. And actually, for some people, it begs the question: should I be limited anymore? And the UK, we don't have a disincorporation relief anymore. They did donkeys years ago, but we don't now. So, even thinking about that and then going through that process, it's going to be painful for some people. But from a numbers perspective, it may make sense. I can't see the increase in, beyond even £50,271, let alone 80,000. Yeah. So I mean, if you're talking about reducing the rate down to is it 19% from 2024, so there's little tweaks, but what the government tend to do is they'll take out one hand and then and the other. So, and we always get this question of, well, the wealthy never pay tax, and that, I suppose that's something for another podcast. But I think what people fail to remember is that the tax laws are there, the tax legislation is there, and the allowances and reliefs, of which there are over 1,000, are available to everybody. So I think it's a case of knowing the system and being able to work it to your advantage, and that's where you'll see tax savings, and you'll be able to grow your business quicker because you've got that education and that trusted advisor to help you maximise your profits and minimise taxes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Taxes aren't going anywhere. They've been around for as long as we can remember. And it's a case of, the wealthy are in the know because they have to be, because otherwise no one would make any money. I mean, it cripples some people, but it's literally about knowing how to mitigate it legitimately. And obviously there are ways to do that, which ties nicely into the next question, which I suppose a lot of people are concerned about. Maybe they think into too much, but is choosing a tax advisor. Because I think when we go back to the thought of a tax advisor, just like some accountancy firms, you go in, they've still got carpet, they've got curtains, they're still sending out letters, they haven't moved online yet, and you think that they work more so for the government, HMRC. How do you find a good tax advisor that you can feel comfortable that they're going to work for you and try and save you money, opposed to working more so for the taxman? How does someone find that right individual?
I think it's like you've got to ask the right questions. I think number one, the point to make here is anyone can become an accountant, anyone can become a tax advisor. And the main thing is, if I was looking for an accountant or a tax advisor, if I was a client, I'd want to know, like, and trust that person, right? And actually, not all accountants and tax advisors are boring and sitting, in horrible offices working on, on a typewriter. We're not like that. So I think you have to find someone who's kind of on your level, and someone who takes the time to understand your business, because a tax advisor may be great at writing a report and putting in loads of jargon and loads of legislation that they may want to do or may not want to do, but is that actually helping the client? And I think that's, you have to ask qualifying questions when you're talking to different accountants / tax advisors as to whether you think they can help you. I had a conversation today with somebody. They spoke to me and they were like, I'm so glad I spoke to you because you've made it sound so simple. And they've spoken to somebody else and they started going into technical terms and really confusing and worrying the client in some cases, worrying them about all these different tax laws and what what they'll potentially be getting involved with. So I think get someone on your level, go with someone who's been recommended as well. Especially in property, there's a lot of people that recommend within their own networks. I mean, we're in a mini network with our YouTube groups. I still think that old referral method of word of mouth, and testimonials to back up the work that they've done. That's definitely a good place to start to find the right tax advisor for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So just can you share with us some tax wrappers that are quite common that, you would say to people, look, well, you can take advantage of this? Are there like sort of some top tax wrappers that most people can use, whether they're self-employed or a limited company or even, employed but are running a side hustle? What kind of wrappers could most people take?
Well, I think you'd have to look at each of those cases individually. So if you're running a side hustle and you're making, I don't know, less than $1,000 a year, then you can get an allowance on your tax return that will reduce your tax bill down quite significantly. So you get that trading allowance. In terms of PAYE people, so day job, and the likes, if they have spare cash and they're into their investing, then the number one choice has to be an ISA, right? So a lot of the time people are in their day jobs, they're saving money for whatever reason. It might be to buy a house or it might be to buy an investment property, but actually how can they grow that cash quicker and tax efficiently, they can do that using an ISA. And they tend to be quite overlooked because we speak to a lot of clients, and sometimes there's an expectation of they would expect us to go into more detailed structures than, just use an ISA. But sometimes the basics, and the simpler the structure is, the better it is for the client, because you shouldn't run before you can walk, right? So even just getting the client's goals and saying, well, what are we trying to achieve here? And then work back with the right tax allowances, reliefs, etc. Limited companies, well, number one, have you got the right structure? Have you got the right shareholding structure? Because if you haven't, you're going to be paying a lot of tax if one of you's higher rate and one of you's basic rate, due to the way that dividends are paid out. Number two, are you utilising the dividend allowance, i.e. my example before? Have you got profits in there? If you have, are you at least taking the £2,000 a year? Might help pay for holiday or whatever it might be that you want to spend on. And then I guess thirdly, in limited companies is, are you claiming all of your expenses? You would not believe how many conversations I have you got a mileage log? Have you claimed work from home? Do you own a personal asset that you're using in the business? What about everything you spent on the business before you incorporated? Have you claimed that? There's all these types of conversations, and all these little bits add up. And I think I worked it out the other day. I was like, even if you saved £1,000 in tax savings in 1 year, compounded over, say, their lifetime, which might be the next 30 to 40 years, there's like 45k or whatever the figure was, don't quote me on it. But reality is there's a damn sight more than £1,000 that we can find just through asking the right questions. Yeah. Another one, employing a family member who's actually doing something legit in the business, right? Like, you can't just put them on the payroll, they're doing sweet FA. They have to actually be doing something. But people overlook that, employing spouses and the like. That's a really good allowance as well to take advantage of. National insurance employers allowance. So you may or may not have heard that. So every small business will be entitled to that if they've got more than one employee/director, which means they're basically not going to pay national insurance. So they'll get the salary tax deductible, which will be tax deductible at 19% under 50k profits, or 25% over 50k going forward. So that's a nice relief. People forget about that. What else? Pensions. That is really overlooked. So what can somebody do in a limited company? So they're an owner-managed business. They want to save for their retirement. They've decided they're going to do it through a pension, and they do their net payments through the limited company. Great. But actually, they can still claim the tax relief on their tax return, the further relief that is. And a lot of people forget to do that. So, yeah, there's a lot to go at in terms. As I said, there's over 1,000 reliefs and allowances. So I think we would be here till midnight for me to go through.
I think, I would definitely second behind three of them is people don't take enough advantage. Especially when people come to investing, they try and go overcomplicated, and they try and follow a lot what you see in the media, marketing, whereas actually just take full advantage firstly of the stocks and shares ISAs that you can do, or ISAs, and then, like you say, is claiming back on. I claim pretty much on everything. If I could claim back on this glass of orange juice, I would be, and you can pretty much claim back. I think that's an important point. And then, like you said, I would definitely back up pensions. The private pension, one of the private pensions that I have as well, it sorts out automatically all the tax relief as well, which is handy, because then you haven't got to be hands on. It does it for you depending on the pension provider you go with. So some very awesome and cool points there, and hopefully a bit of an insight. What kind of, if people are looking to take away, because not everyone wants to go to a tax advisor or an accountant. I know someone right now that's doing all their own stuff, and I thought, God, I wouldn't just give it to the professionals, let them do it. But some people do it on their own to make sure that they're doing it correctly. Are there books out there that people can read? Are there sort of, where can people get accurate information? Is it the internet? Is it YouTube?
No, it's not the internet, because most of the tax stuff that's out there on the internet is out of date, or it's just simply incorrect. So I wouldn't rely on that. You know, I've had to go through years and years and years of qualifications to get where I am. If you want to know that you're doing it right, then if you really want to learn, you've got to do the qualifications right. Other than that, you could potentially buy the Tolley's tax books if you really wanted to, and start going through legislation. But I think the point is here, if you are that into getting your taxes right, you either need to go into it as a career, or you need to pay a professional who's worked all of those years to get to that point and summarise it for you and do all the hard work for you, because tax is quite a complicated area, and actually most accountants do not even entertain it for that reason. So yeah, there's no shortcut really. You know, you could start with YouTube. I'm starting a YouTube channel, so I'll be doing that for educational purposes and be caveating it off with this is not tax advice.
Advice, or yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, just be careful of what's out there. Like, for example, it's probably not wise to watch a YouTube video and then go and implement a strategy without having it checked out first, because it may not be right for you, because whilst you've done some homework, there may be something that the accountant or tax advisor needs to ask, or you know, would change the circumstances significantly that you may not be aware of. So I would always say check with a professional before you do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can learn, I think you can put yourself in the know of certain things, but to go away and make really sort of in-depth decisions, especially around tax, you do need to know exactly. And like you say, you've done years of training, so you know, we can rely on someone like you. I think to sort of come to a close, something that's really cool, something that's definitely changed over a period of time, this goes for accountants, all kind of more formal professional businesses, is when you see people like yourself on social media showing that fun side, showing the human side of it, which ultimately makes people want to work with you. So obviously, you know, you've had a couple of reels do well, you're in the TikTok. How important do you feel it is that, you know, you stay up to date with socials and you get yourself out there? Because I said to you pretty much from the off, I love the branding, I love the colours, it pops, it's in your face, and you kind of almost feel a little bit homely and reassured when you see a page like yours. So how important is that to you, and has that paid you dividends in terms of people reaching out to you?
It's number one. It's number one, because if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. If you are trying to grow a small business and trying to get your name out there and build that credibility, in my mind, you have to do that. So, you know, we don't always want to do it. I don't always want to make a TikTok video or, you know, sit and write content for Instagram, because, you know, I'm a mum as well. I've got 2 young children, and I guess that's where the human side of it comes in, right? You know, when people look at the profile, etc. But it has to be done, because if you think about what traditional accountants don't do, it's that side of it. They don't do social media. They don't do the, you know, proactive liaising with people and actually genuinely being interested in people's businesses. So for me, social media has to be a number one focus for any business owner, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been amazing to have you on. Amy, where can people go to find you and then reach out and, you know, even potentially go on to work with you?
Yeah, so I'm really active on Instagram, so you can find me at Property Tax Queen. TikTok, same handle, at Property Tax Queen, or you can find me on LinkedIn under Amy Richardson, Property Tax Queen.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, Amy, it's been a pleasure to have you on. And for everyone that has watched this far, thank you so much, and we'll see you all very soon.